Hello everyone and welcome to episode 2 of Retro Reviews. In this episode I will be reviewing and talking about the first comic that actually got me hooked into comic books and becoming a regular reader and a buyer of comics. This book is Peter Parker Spider-Man Volume 2 number 6 uh, from 1999. Cover dated June 1999. Probably bought it sometime in April or maybe May of 1999. So, as I mentioned in the very first episode, um, my first experience with buying comic books was back in 1993, where I bought, of course, the issue I reviewed of The Flash and Superman number 81. So those were my first comics, both of them bought on the same day. Uh, Fast forward to 1996. So most of my teen years were spent in buying CDs, Beatles music, and other groups from the 1960s, which was what I was interested in, some rock and roll as well. But I was playing the guitar, so I'd spend some of my money on guitar magazines, books, to learn new songs, new Beatles songs, basically. Uh, um, and I really wasn't that into comics, even though I picked up a couple a few years earlier. But in 1996, when the in a weekend, I don't remember if it was Saturday or Sunday, we went out to eat at a restaurant, a chain restaurant. So in Mexico, we have two major chain restaurants. Uh, One is called Vips, the other one is called Sanborns. So what characterizes these restaurants is that they also have uh, like little department stores. So they have like a place where they have a pharmacy and they sell CDs and books and magazines, both national or import magazines, and all sorts of toys and accessories. Actually, Vips doesn't do that anymore. Sunburns does still, so you could actually find comics in Sunburns, but not American comics because back in the 90s, you still had the newsstand market. So while there were comic shops, and I did not buy those until a year later, until 2000, where I went to my first shop. Uh, all the newsstand stuff you could find in this place because I imported all these magazines, all of these magazines. So I decided to buy a couple more. But instead of buying DC, and that had a lot to do with what I felt about my issue of Superman, that I wanted to go to something more quote unquote grounded, which was Marvel. Marvel, I sort of knew had that sort of grounded reputation that it was much more realistic, and I guess pretty much because of the TV shows and stuff, I was very aware of Marvel. I was aware of Marvel since I was a kid because the Spider-Man cartoons, basically. So so I decided to. I was looking at the comics. I actually remember seeing the Superman wedding album, which every time I think about it, I kick myself because I could have gotten it. You, I haven't found that. I've seen it like once a long time ago, and I didn't buy it then either. So I could have gotten that issue, but I went for Spider-Man instead. So I bought Spider-Man number 72, which I don't have anymore, and Spectacular Spider-Man 239, which I do have, but the cover is pretty messed up. Because at that time I didn't know about comic shops, so I just put them away in one of my desk drawers for 3 years after I read them. So comment 99, I was about to go into college, or I was in college, um, and it was one of those off days where either I was between semesters or I didn't have any class that day. So I was watching, TV. So they were running the Spider-Man animated series, uh, which was a great show actually. And I kind of got interested again in those in the comics, and of course I found my comics in my drawer. I reread them. I got a little interested in checking out what was going on in the comics, and so one day I got it down to the Sanborns that was closer to my house. I picked up this issue, and I came back the next week to pick up the Amazing Experiment Volume 2, issue number 6. And so from that point on, uh, I became a regular Marvel reader. I started to add the X-Men. By the year 2000, I've gone to a convention, one of two that I've actually gone throughout my entire life. Found about the shop, one shop which is very close where I live. Back when in their old house, that was like a 2 hour trip actually, just going and coming. For night, just can walk over there, and then getting into comic culture. I learned about another shop, which is the one that I still go to every week, which again is very close from where I live now. But yeah, again, a 2 hour trip. So they're very close. So I used to go to both shops, just to either take a bus and walk, uh, or just walk from one shop to the other. I just got to that one shop, which is a larger chain. So from 1999 to 2009, I was pretty much into Marvel. Though I started to shift around 2005. So by that time, uh, by the early 2000s, I was buying, Spider-Man books, all of them, the Avengers, Iron Man, Daredevil, the X-Men I mentioned, um, and some other Marvel titles that were coming out. So at some point, I actually had to drop a few books because I couldn't afford them at the time to buy that many that many books. DC would sometimes, but I would sometimes buy a DC book. I bought the Spanish versions, which were about a year behind. So I got a lot of storylines from 1998 from DC, but I would sometimes pick up one or two issues of the Flash, and so by 2005, I pretty much dropped every Marvel book I had. I dropped Spider-Man just like that because there was going to be a crossover, and I was really interested in what was going on at DC because I started to buy from both companies. And I heard about the whole Infinite Crisis thing, so I was more interested in that than picking up Spider-Man books that I wasn't really interested in anyway. So by 2005, I was only buying X-Men, the X-Men books, and Daredevil, which by 2009 I just dropped and I went all into DC. But again, depending, I do sometimes go back to Marvel. Uh, my big issue with Marvel is the price versus the actual quality of the product. You know, cheaper paper in their covers. I think they're getting better now. Uh, but I do go back and forth. I do like to check, what's going on at Marvel, as I was doing checking out what's going on at DC before. I became a full time DC reader. So, anyways, I spent 10 minutes talking about the whole history. Anyway, so this issue, so I believe in 1998, Marvel decided to cancel all of their Spider-Man books. At the time you had four. You had Amazing, you had Peter Parker Spider-Man, which was actually the original Spider-Man book, which was renamed Peter Parker after the Clone Saga. Sensational Spider-Man, which had replaced Web of Spider-Man, and Spectacular. So in 1999, they restarted the whole line with just two books, Peter Parker Spider-Man and Amazing Spider-Man, and an anthology title that was not continuity, which was called Web Spinner's Tales of Spider-Man, which various themes would come and tell specific short arcs around 3 issues that took place within throughout Spider-Man history. So you had stuff from like the early days to like stuff in the 70s or in the 80s, so on and so forth. So, anyways, I go to Sanborns, find this issue, and I liked it. So, with this new volume, the first storyline revolved around 3 things. One, in the previous volume ended with Peter giving up being Spider-Man, which of course didn't last. So he goes back to being Spider-Man, but he hasn't told Mary Jane. Mary Jane is now again a supermodel, but she's been, uh, she's been stalked by someone who keeps calling her on the phone, but she doesn't tell Peter. And then, the main sort of antagonist of this whole storyline that goes in the beginning is this U.S. Senator Ward, who has some mysterious plot around him. Uh, he has connections to the Kingpin, which we learn in this issue, and connections to Arthur Stacy, Captain Stacy's brother, who was sort of reintroduced a few years earlier to sort of renew that cast, the Spider-Man cast. They brought Gwen's cousins, Jill Stacy, who became friends with Mary Jane, and her brother Paul. So this issue starts with the Kingpin actually killing someone to send a message that he was back. He was back. With him is Bullseye, who the Kingpin tells him to go and kill this senator because, reasons which we don't really know. And everybody's been attacking so that senator himself has been attacked by various villains, including Hydra, which Spider-Man is fighting as well. So when Spider-Man tries to question the senator of why he's such a target, he throws Spider-Man under the bus and also tells the police that are coming in that he is also trying to kill him. So Spider-Man's pretty angry, says he's gonna get his answers. We go to the penthouse apartment of the Parkers, where Arthur Stacy is there with Jill, who wants to talk to Spider-Man, and he knows that Peter has somewhere to contact him because of all the pictures he takes of him. But Mary Jane says he doesn't because she still believes that Peter is not Spider-Man anymore. So the Arthur Stacy leaves the apartment, and he is brought. He's approached by a limousine. And these tough guys who say that Cinder wants to talk to him. So the scene shifts to a rooftop where the senator and which is the senator and Arthur Stacey are talking, and again we got this whole weird mysterious thing that goes back to Hong Kong, where where Arthur Stacey was working as a private detective. Actually, basically, is very scared of the senator. That's why he wanted Spearman to help him out. Uh, and so the issue ends pretty much with this big confrontation between Spider-Man, Bull, and Bullseye. Bullseye shows up, tries and goes and tries to kill the senator, but Spider-Man shows up. So there's this big fight going on between them throughout this whole ish throughout this whole half. Uh, Bullseye escapes, but actually is able to harm, injure Arthur Stacey. The the senator, of course. So having failed, Bullseye throws in a bomb, tries blows up the building which was in construction. Spider-Man is able to save both Arthur and the senator, but the senator gets away. Bullseye gets away, and it ends with Arthur Stacey telling Spider-Man that the senator has to be stopped. So that's pretty much the issue. So so there's a whole bunch of subplots going on, which are perfectly well explained here by writer Howard Nagy. Of course, the art is by John Romita Jr. Uh, and Scott Hanna on inks. Um, so what kept me coming back, I guess, at the time was trying to learn more about this setter and what his deal was, because it wasn't really explained. So I guess if you looking back into it, I don't even think Howard Mackey had much of an idea, because how that storyline ended, um, it was very anticlimactic. I don't think it made sense with what was being teased at earlier. I don't know. This issue alone doesn't tell us anything, but it was very intriguing as to what was going on, as to who this character was, why he was so dangerous, why everybody wanted him dead, what did he know, and so that sort of kept bringing me back to the comics. Plus, I knew exactly where I could get comic every month and every week as I started to get more and more into it. Um, so yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. One note though, and this was very typical at the time. So the next issue blurb uh, at the end here in the letters page mentioned a storyline called, or a story called, Perfect World. Well, that was supposed to be coming out in this book, which it did not. It actually showed up in Amazing Spider-Man, the two-part storyline. Uh, because I remember just going to pick up issue 7 and I expected a different story, and I got something completely different, which was an appearance by Blade and Morbius, which had really nothing to do with what was announced at the end of this issue, and it actually showed up in Amazing Spider-Man. So that was very weird, and not being really into comics at that time and into the whole the news websites that were popping up and everything. was sort of took me that by surprise. The big shift, which I didn't know was happening, or why it was supposed to be done by Howard Mackey and John Romita, and it ended up being by Howard Mackey and John Byrne, or why there was no coordination as to why they decided to announce something and then give you something else. Anyways, I'm rambling. So that's it for this episode of Retro Reviews. Uh, Next week I have a couple of new books. Um, I think I have like the entire month with books. Uh, I believe so. So I'll probably pre-record uh, the next Golden Age Superman episode and put it up sometime during the next few weeks, because I'm pretty sure I have no free weeks now. Anyways, when the next Golden Age Superman story pops up, episode pops up, I'll let you know if I'll be on Twitter, if I'll be putting that up. If you follow me and have a notification, you might want to have get the notification thing, hit the notification bell so you know when that episode's coming up. So that episode will be reviewing Action Comics number 2, uh, and I'll probably even do another retro review video where I will be reviewing Superman number 650, the first part of the 1 year later storyline, Up, Up, and Away. So until next time, keep smiling.